The next face-to-face encounter for the field of 70 looking towards contender in the fall stands dangerously close to a tango with a track known as Too Tough to Tame. A Darlington Raceway front and center brings us to the fifth stop for the 2022 eNASCAR Road to Pro qualifying iRacing series, where we welcome you to our live coverage right here on Podium Esports. 4 races in and only 3 remain, the intensity only ramping up on the first step to eNASCAR glory, where alongside Rachel Whiteford up in the broadcast booth from Darlington, South Carolina, my name is Kenneth Bueno. We will have our producer Ryan Bauer giving you all the shots here from the track Too Tough to Tame using cameras created by Dougie Beard. Well, Rachel, we have already made multiple different stops in this itinerary for round 2 to close this down to the 20 that will make the eNASCAR Contender iRacing Series this fall. We've already pledged the diversity of this round 2 schedule, Darlington only adding to the hurdle for the competition tonight.
Yeah, it really is, and this track is definitely going to be an interesting one for us. We've had a few interesting ones so far, but nothing like this. Now, we often have places like Dover, of course, where it's got similarities, but Darlington, it has 2 different sets of corners here, and it races so very differently across the lap. And when things get dirty on the track and things end up sideways, and by dirty I mean the track ends up messy and blocked, it doesn't really self-clean like Dover does. You end up with trucks all over the place here, and it can cause problems. Pit in and out is incredibly difficult. You know why it's this shape? There's a pond at one end, and the farmer didn't want to move their pond or have their pond filled in, so they made the track narrower. So it's by nature of necessity rather than design we have this shape, but it makes for exciting racing.
Just working for the environment around the racetrack, and that's why you see that tighter end of the racetrack. Like you said, that's been one of the most notable parts about this Darlington Raceway, is that you can master 1 and 2, then you get to 3 and 4, and you have to handle a completely different beast. As you look at the degrees in each and every corner, it's 23 degrees in turns 1 and 2, or rather 23 degrees in turns 3 and 4. It's 25 degrees at its most in 1 and 2. That's the larger radius part of the track. That's where you're going to have the most momentum. 23 degrees is where you'll find it in 3 and 4. That shorter end of the racetrack where you're probably going to have to hop on the brakes, go a little bit slower. You'll find 2 to 3 degrees on the main straightaway, front straightaway, and back straightaway. Of course, this track located in Darlington, South Carolina, and opened all the way back in 1950, so it is one of the oldest tracks on the NASCAR calendar. And each and every year, Rachel, when drivers in the sim and in real life go to this track, they circle it because they know how tough it is to drive in any type of track condition. It's just a track that really demands a lot out of you behind the wheel, and it really demands your respect, because if you try and over push your boundaries, if you just try to disrespect it in any sort of way thinking you can handle the beast, the track Too Tough to Tame will rip you out of anything, and it will surely punish you right. As we'll look at the race analysis for tonight's race, we go 120 laps from the track Too Tough to Tame. We go just over 163 miles, 263 kilometers. These guys have 3 sets of tires in the pits. Of course, no fast repairs in this Road to Pro qualifying iRacing series. We've got open setups, and we do have 3 green-white checkered attempts if we do need them. And Rachel, with this race analysis, obviously we look towards lap 120, the checkered flag, who will take the race victory, but you also have to think about point standings. We're in the final 3 races of this round 2 schedule, so that means that you need to start making yourself known if you haven't already in round 2. And if you've already made that statement, you just want to continue to build that on and build that buffer to the top 20 so you can make contender.
Yeah, you absolutely do, and we've had some weird and wonderful tracks, which means after a difficult race last week at IRP, guys here are looking for stability. That's really necessary, especially for the points. We had some up and down last time, and we've had a road course, and we've had Pocono. We've had some real weirdness this round, but this is a pretty familiar track to a lot of drivers. It's difficult, and it can be very unforgiving, but it is familiar. And one thing I really want to say that just drives so differently to any other track we have on the schedule is turn 1 and 2. You're not going into it like you do in many, should we say, many normal tracks, because you're off the gas to turn in, and then you're almost back on the gas fully through most of the middle of the corner before you kind of apex really late in 2. It's such an unusual place to drive.
And also the narrow nature of the track too, where you don't have as many lanes wide-wise as you would at many other intermediate tracks or even some of the short tracks on the calendar here in this Road to Pro qualifying iRacing series schedule. We looked at IRP just a couple of weeks back. That track has so many lanes you could use from the bottom all the way to the very top. And here at Darlington, it just funnels every single driver throughout the entire track. Yes, you've got space on the straightaways, but if you cannot get to the corner in the banking, then good luck too. You're going to lose a lot of momentum, and we're going to have a lot of those guys try to figure that out and settle themselves through as we get closer and closer to the start of tonight's race from Darlington, South Carolina. Qualifying has just come to a close. That means it's our time to take you through the starting grid, see exactly where every driver and your favorite driver will be lining up here tonight. From Darlington, it'll be Joey Brown in the 17 machine. He will be on pole, the winner at Mid-Ohio in the second split earlier in round number 2. He will have Blake Bottoms to his outside in that first row, first to see the green flag. Casey Tucker will be inside of row number 2. He will have Justin Knobloch to his outside, the 1K on his outside once they take the green behind that very first row. And then behind them, you'll find Eddie Ball, Eddie Kerner in his machine. He will be inside of that third row. Tyler Gary sporting a very interesting throwback. We'll touch on that later on in tonight's race through the green flag. He starts outside in that third row. Daniel Falkingham also sporting a very nice throwback here tonight from the race. He will have Agnell Phillip in the 16 to his outside for P8. And then the final two drivers, Rachel, before we get to the rest of 11th on back, it'll be Jonathan Delaney inside row number 5, Kenny Brady to round out your top 10.
It will be. It'll be Michael Cozy Jr. in the 99 there, P11 on the inside. On the outside, Timmy Holmes in the 13th spot. It's Tucker Minter with the 10 truck, and Brandon Mckissick in the 53 on his outside. Row number 8 is Parker White on the outside, Anthony Burrows with the 62. Row number 9 is going to be Tommy Gossett in the 80 with the 11 of Matt Bacapa in 18th. 19th is going to be Christopher Pfeffer on his outside, Nathan Jurgensen in the 21.
We'll have everyone 21st on back. It starts with the 12 of Daniel Smallwood, who will be 21st. He'll have Alex Bergeron to his outside in that 11th row. Michigan winner Jackson Crowder a couple of weeks back here on Podium Esports. He will have to work from 23rd if he wants to get another win in round number 2. He will have Pocono winner Boyd Hogan to his very outside in at 24th starting spot. To round out the top 25, it'll be Connor Horn. In his machine, he'll have Matt Hooker in 26 to his outside. And then the final ones in this field, Derek Lemke, 27, 28 to Brian Blackford, 29 to Daniel Nanny, and Ty E. Bass is scheduled to be the final driver. But it looks like he will not make the green flag, did not set himself on the grid here tonight from Darlington. Hopefully we can see him get into the session sooner than later and run some laps with these guys. We go 120 laps, of course, like we mentioned in our race analysis. And one thing to note, Rachel, this track is hot. 105 degrees on the track temp. We're running in the middle of the afternoon. We did so similarly last year in round number 1. So safe to say these guys are going to be spinning the rear tires quite often here in this race.
Yeah, and that's not what you want on a restart in Darlington. That's not what you want in 3 and 4 especially. Coming off turn 2 could be a real kicker here because it could give it a bit of a kink. We'll get a look at the restart. We'll talk about it in a moment.
So the pace car will clear away from the field entrance to pit road. It's an early jump for Joey Brown, Blake Bottoms, row number 1, as we go green flag racing from Darlington in race 5 of round 2 in the 2022 eNASCAR Road to Pro qualifying iRacing series.
Big start here in 1 and 2 onto the back straight for the first time, and these guys getting this thing done early, trying to keep it together here. Still running too wide for a good part of the field, but single file out really early here. It's important to get into that racing groove and get your car moving. And the reason I was talking about turn 1 and 2, Kenneth, is coming off turn 2, there's a bit of a hump coming off 2. And if you are loose, that can kick you around and you'll go right to the inside wall.
And if you get that understeer off of the bump that's in the middle of turn 2, you can send yourself into that outside safer barrier. We've seen turn 2 be the trouble spot for so many drivers on the sim and in real life. But fortunately for the field, looks like they have singled themselves out. I think they understand how tough it is to run side by side here at Darlington. That's practically the last thing you want to happen. Be door to door, and especially be to the outside in the middle of the corner. So all of these guys wanted to single themselves through. There was almost a potential pass on the jump of the race on the initial start. It almost was Casey Tucker making a move underneath Blake Bottoms in the 20. That did not happen. Tucker backed out, so he's going to hold out hope for third. He will catch up to the Toyota Tundra TRD Pro up in front. We'll see if he can do anything about it to move up in a second. Here's a potential pass through the top 11. That's Michael Cozy Jr. sporting a Starcom Racing throwback, one of the backmarker teams in the NASCAR Cup Series a couple of years back. And he's been known, Rachel, for these paint schemes and that familiar number 99 in sim. But nice to see the throwback on the Chevy Silverado tonight, making the move on Timmy Holmes for 11th and looking on Jonathan Delaney up ahead in 10th.
Yeah, trying to get some movement done here in the early running, but it's going to be easy for the first few laps. When you've got the good grip on the tires, it really races pretty well. When you have this place dialed in, it's easy to do, but this is a place where tire wear is extremely aggressive, and with it being really hot here, grip level is going to go down, the tire wear is going to go up. These guys are going to have a really hard day here.
This track has been known to test the physicalness of the drivers. We talk about how mentality works into it, how mentally it can be tough for a majority of the field to work through strategy, to work through the drivers up in front and behind them, where the lines are going to be taken, how tire wear comes into a factor. But this track is more about the physical nature of the driver behind the wheel. How physical are you willing to get behind the wheel? And when that truck starts to step out, once it starts to get a little rougher on you, how do you handle it with the arms as you're stalling the steering wheel to get into the corner? Here's a look at Michael Cozy Jr. again. He cleared Jonathan Delaney, so a nice short run truck right now for the 99 machine. It looks like Delaney may have some more trouble on the horizon because it looks like Timmy Holmes tried to put a move on him, backed out. It looks like Tucker Minter, 4th in points, or rather 5th in points going into tonight's race in round number 2. He looks to the bottom in 3 and 4.
Yeah, he does, trying to get something going there. We've got a couple guys back there doing exactly the same thing here. We're on board with White at the moment as we're going to head into 1 and 2 here. And you're going to see them duck super low here, clip that bottom line right up along the top here. And then you're dipping down and kind of squaring off the bottom of 2. You'll see him come down there in that drop down bump. And that's where we'll get people getting sideways in a couple of laps time. And we'll see about 10, 12, maybe 15 laps before this starts to get really loose on people. But it bites you pretty quickly.
Got a battle here around the top 13. 2 of the Titans in this Road to Pro qualifying iRacing series. Surprisingly pretty low on the field at the moment. They started fairly deep in tonight's field. Tucker Minter starting 13th. That's where he sits right now. And Parker White started in 15th. He has only moved 1 spot to the positive since the drop of the green. He's now 14th, working behind that Logitech G Altus Esports driver. And we'll talk about their throwbacks. They both have interesting paint schemes here tonight from Darlington. You ride on board further up through the field. That is Kenny Brady up in 9th, so a couple spots ahead of the battle we're just talking about. He's working on Agnell Phillip, who was in the top 3 at Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course a couple of weeks back in our first race of round number 2. And then there's Daniel Falkingham. Rachel, do you remember this scheme at all? Do you recall the colors that's on this 39? I know it wasn't a truck that the actual scheme was ran on, but the scheme, very, very popular here at this track.
Yeah, it definitely has been one that's been pretty popular. Nice to see it come back.
That is the 2003 Ricky Craven throwback that he won against Kurt Busch in that stellar run to the finish. That is still, I think, the closest NASCAR finish in Cup Series history. You look on board back with Parker White, who's still looking to work on Tucker Minter, just can't quite do it. And Rachel, in a way, this track tests the mentality of the drivers in a different way. You take a look at the fantastic grill cam going into turn 3 here on that bright green and black Chevy Silverado. This track forces you to think differently as a driver, because most of the time at the intermediate tracks and even at the short tracks, you're thinking about entrance of corner or apex of the corner to make passes happen. But here at Darlington, just because the track is so narrow, just because there's so many treacherous spots that you don't really want to risk putting yourself in a bad situation in, you have to think about exit of the corner, think about momentum out of turn 2 and out of turn 4 to make passes instead of in the middle of the corner and the entrance like it would usually be at every single other track. So it's somewhat of a different mindset these guys have to think exit for passes, not entrance.
Yeah, you really are, and it's about trying to get the pass set up over a couple of laps here, really, with how you have to do it. You're looking to try and get it done coming off that corner. Coming out of 2 is good, coming out of 4 is great, but it has to be basically set up at least a lap beforehand to even get that momentum going. And you can find yourself in the right spot there for it, but another thing is just trying to get underneath someone in some of these places, or above them. If you can get above them in 3, you're going to hold that, and you're going to take the place. If you can get below them in 1, you're going to take that. So there's a bit of entry, but it's most execute on the exit.
Definitely true, especially with the line you can take in 1 and 2. You're basically blocking every opportunity for a driver to make a move on you. Here, look at Agnell Phillip, just how this line is. It's a very diamondy type line, and you can't really run the very bottom just because you won't have as much momentum and you can't really build it up out of turn 2 by just rolling the bottom the entire time. You have to slide up the track, then work through the bump, and then try to arc it back down on that dash line. Some drivers even using the apron to get some more rotation. We've seen some of them do it entrance of turn 1 just to get those left side tires on and make sure they can actually get through the first corner without smacking the outside wall and getting that infamous Darlington stripe. So again, touching back on the passes on the exit, you're looking for a momentum buildup out of turn 2 and out of turn 4. You're not looking at middle of the corner passes, although Casey Tucker is trying to prove us wrong, Rachel, trying to look underneath Blake Bottoms. This has been a methodical journey for the 6 of Casey Tucker over the past couple laps, but he's just not been able to make that pass complete, and they're letting Joey Brown run away as a result.
Yeah, they really are. And just to explain what we mean by coming out the exit, you want to be alongside coming off the exit, in that you have the prime line for entry to the next corner, meaning the other truck's going to have to back out, because if you're offline going into these corners, you go straight to the wall. So what you want to be is you want to be using that exit speed to get alongside of the preferred side for the corner ahead. So you're basically forcing a decision at that point.
I think you just said the perfect statement at the perfect time, because Blake Bottoms had chirped over the radio and basically let Casey Tucker by. He wasn't dealing with side-by-side action, didn't want to do so, so he just said, all right, Casey, I know you're a little bit faster right now. It's a lap 16, I'll let you by, and then later we can probably settle our differences by the time this race is over. We've gotten green so far with the first 16, and here's a potential pass here through the top 12. It is Tucker Minter under Timmy Holmes in the bottom of 3 and 4. He's going to be able to clear the fellow Chevy Silverado out of the 4th corner onto the front straightaway. And now it's all on Parker White to try and make this happen. Holmes has fallen back slightly after starting in P12. He's actually now back to 13th. He made some progress on the opening jump of the race, but just has stalled quite frequently. And now here comes another potential pass. Justin Nonlock entrance turn 3 on Blake Bottoms. It looks like Bottoms, Rachel, over the first 17 has not been able to dial in that setup for this type of run. As you watch on board with the car or the truck right behind them, Eddie Kerner, who almost looked 3 wide, thought better of it going back to turn 1.
There's no such thing as pulling off a good 3 wide here. It's a desperation thing. You don't want to be in that position because it will really upset anybody's attempt to get a line at all. But all 3 of you end up losing speed, which brings more in. But we've got 1 in the wall, I think, as well. It's a bit of a slap, but we should be okay going forward. But you pick up a stripe here, it will cost you. This aero is super important here, surprisingly.
That's definitely true. We've harped on that, especially at the larger tracks, Michigan being one of them, where if you smack the outside wall or even if you get contact with another truck, if you get some damage, the aerodynamic negative effects on that is certainly going to hurt you, specifically on the straightaways, as you look with Tyler Gary, who made that pass as a result of Bottoms' mistake, hitting that outside wall. And the magic of having a Darlington race in any league, even with the Road to Pro qualifying iRacing series, is that you get to have the throwback spirit. Tyler Gary is certainly indulging in that. This scheme, his go-kart scheme from his younger years, so nice to see a throwback there to himself. I know a couple of drivers have already did throwbacks to themselves. Falkingham not one of them. He's obviously throwing it back to Ricky Craven's 2003 car, but it's nice to see, Rachel, the passion that a lot of these drivers have to throw back to drivers that they've been fans of for many years on end. As you look at Kenny Brady give a tap to Falkingham getting around Bottoms going into turn 3, and also themselves, their family history, their racing history in real life, or just anything they like in the motorsports world in general, they can throw back to that car, that scheme, and somewhat go back to memories as a racing fan and as a sim racing driver.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's one of the things I love about this track is I always look forward to a little bit of space making going on there, as tiny touch of contact, but nothing too much. I always love making my throwback liveries for races here at Darlington. Every single time we came, it would be something I'd just do because it felt like the right thing to do. It's kind of the tradition of Darlington, and it's always good to try different places.
And Darlington is definitely the best place, no doubt, Rachel, to go for a throwback scheme. I know I've done it many times. I'm an avid Jimmy Johnson fan, so I'm always looking for a different Jimmy Johnson scheme to represent out on track. I'm not that great of a racer, so you're probably never going to see me on a broadcasted race in the sim, but I still like to do it every now and then. You look at Justin Knobloch here, who made the pass a while back on Blake Bottoms and company and is now looking on Eddie Kerner. I believe they have traded hands, so Kerner has now moved into 3rd. He would try to look on Casey Tucker up ahead the road in 2nd, as Joey Brown has extended the lead to 1.5 seconds roughly. It is closing slightly. Lap times at a difference between Brown and Tucker. I believe Brown faster this time by, so Tucker may not be too far ahead. or too far behind the road. We may see a battle between them if things get to that point. But for now, Joey Brown just setting the tone, setting the rhythm for the field. And Rachel, that's definitely something that you want to have as a driver. You want to be out in front, have the cleanest air out of everybody else, and at a track that's mostly reliable on you as a driver nailing the track instead of racing everybody else around you. Joey Brown would love nothing more than to race the track and race himself.
You will until he catches up to lap traffic. That's when it becomes really interesting at Darlington. Probably one of those tricky places to catch lap traffic because there's not a good place to get past them. You got to watch out for that, of course. It's really important, and it will bite you sometimes. But here's one for the audience. Which 90s car ran with the M&M scheme? That's when I ran here at Darlington. I think one of the last times I came here. Who was it drove the M&M scheme in the 90s?
I feel like I'm going to get this wrong. That's my problem. I wasn't born around that time. I'm not even a good NASCAR historian either. As there's almost contact there at Sacramento. Blake Bottoms, and Bottoms, after striking the outside wall once, is going to hit it twice and potentially a third time. And he's in a pitfall through the field at a turn 2.
Yeah, unfortunately, you give it a good slap, you're going to lose momentum. It's going to send you backwards, so you've got to watch out for that.
And Bottoms is going to bring it to pit road. I think he's had enough. We'll take a look and see exactly what happened. But when you go side by side at Darlington, chances are you're going to have some sort of contact. And when somebody makes a mistake, it is going to cost one. And it unfortunately cost Blake Bottoms, who had such a strong start to tonight's event. And it looks like he is definitely out of this race. He pulled it into the pit lane. He has moved it behind the wall. So Blake Bottoms' night goes from solid to start to all of a sudden intensely rough. You watch this battle here. That was with Jonathan Delaney and his Chevy Silverado. They went side by side, and it looked like Tucker Minter just slid up the track, and they both made contact. And that's one of the toughest places, Rachel, to make that kind of contact. They're sliding in the middle of the corner just to make the arc out of turn 2. Bottoms hits the outside wall. I think the frustration all too high, and then thought, well, this is definitely my race over. I don't want to have any part of this anymore after 27 laps. And unfortunately, Bottoms becomes our first DNF here tonight from Darlington.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's going to hurt his points, but you get that sometimes with a race. You're just not going to gain it back. And this is lap 28 will stay green. That's telling me this race is going to be a very tactical one. It's going to be a fuel race. It's going to be a tire race.
And we've seen many races happen like this before in this eNASCAR Road to Pro qualifying iRacing series. Specifically here at Darlington, this track and the RTP field has a good record with safety and a lack of cautions. Over the last 2 Road to Pro Darlington races, they've had a combined total of 4 cautions across the top 2 splits. Of course, last year when they raced Darlington, it was in round 1, so you had hundreds of splits, many drivers in each and every field, in each and every category. So obviously a wide range. You can't count all the cautions unless you just had a stat machine, but the last 2 times, at least that they've been broadcasted in the top 2 splits from us at Podium Esports and our friends over at ftf.gg, 4 cautions total. That means you're having a lot of green flag racing. And last year, when Donovan Strauss set a clinic on the field and got to victory lane at that track and just set the tone for his campaign to move into the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series this year, that race went caution-free, and we've gone caution-free over the first 30 laps. So potentially, Rachel, a sign to come for the next 90.
Yeah, huge sign to go, and it is definitely one of those things you'll have to work out if it's something that can go that way. Sometimes it doesn't want to, and you've got to be really careful with that because it's, you can change in a heartbeat. That's what you got to remember. At a track like this, it will go from being a green race to a caution fest in minutes, because you get one caution and it starts to spiral. And I've had a couple of comments in the chat, and I think we actually had one. Yeah, we did. A diet soda can. Kenny Trader. That's the one.
Nice, nice. I am going to agree with JCE Esports that said Elliott Sadler, because that's
2000s.
Yeah, 2000. That is 2000. I know. I still remember, when I used to watch NASCAR back then, that Elliott Sadler was the M&M's car. Obviously, a lot of people can say Kyle Busch is the face of the M&M's car, but obviously you said 1990s. Kyle wasn't even racing at that point. So yes, Ken Schrader, the right answer for sure. I like the question and some of the history here from Rocking, rather, at Darlington. As you look at a rocky move there from Anthony Burrows underneath Daniel Falkingham, it looks like Falkingham might have hit the outside wall. And so here comes Burrows. Here comes Delaney to the inside. Those are passes within the top 10. So Falkingham having a strong start to the race, but that one Darlington stripe affecting the aero, and Falkingham will lose some spots, but fortunately will have some space before the next truck tries to chop him off. Tucker Minter in the 10 machine.
Yeah, like I said a minute ago, this is one of those races where you can just say, oh, it's been green this far. It's going to stay green the whole race, boring. You can change in a heartbeat again. just like Dover, just like Martinsville, once it spirals, it gets worse. But Darlington and Dover, they tend to do it worse just because of the nature of the track. So you end up with something that really starts to affect people. And once a couple of guys have a little bit of damage, ooh, hello. A little bit further back in the field, I just watched Matt for Kappa slide up in front of the 12 of Smallwood there, just clipped the bumper. So some of these trucks aren't holding on like they used to.
It's a trio, and it may as well turn into more trucks behind the line. Of course, that is Boyd Hogan, Matt for Kappa, 17th, 18th, Daniel Smallwood in 19th, and then goes Tommy Gossett. Looks like he's allowing some trucks around, and to turn 3, Jackson Crowder, Nathan Jurgensen, and there may be a call for pit road on lap number 34. Actually, no, he's just letting the whole field by in the apron, so there may be some potential issues out of Tommy Gossett, and even then some more issues for another driver who's on pit road, Alex Bergeron in the 22, so a bizarre set of circumstances for lap 35.
Yeah, very much so, and wow, it is definitely going on here. Getting some movement starting to happen, some trucks with their tyre wears getting a bit more severe, getting worked on here. Keep my eyes right now on the 3, the 12, and the 28, who are busy rolling the 25 here, and it's that off the corner run. Oh, a bit of a wobble for the 12. Gets themselves a little bit sideways. That's more than they'd want here. You can see him into 1 and 2. Oh, bit of contact. It is wrecking already. Oh, down the track, round they go. We'll get a caution out of that, I think. Yes, we will. I told you. It happens in seconds, and it goes boom.
Yeah, Smallwood goes around. He got hit from the rear, and multiple other trucks involved, I believe, that might have saved Tommy Gossett, who was letting the whole field by. Nathan Jurgensen also involved in the contact as well. And you mentioned it, Rachel, the sketchiness of these drivers going side by side. And I mentioned touching that apron in 1 and 2 to get some extra rotation on the left side tires. Might have been too much rotation on behalf of Smallwood. Just got sideways, moved up into Matt for Kappa. There's a look at Jurgensen, who got involved. He tried to get around him, but just got tagged late. And then another truck who just slammed into the front end of Smallwood. That is Matt Cooker in his machine. We'll take a look on board from Jurgensen. He has the front row seat of this action in turn 1. Smallwood goes sideways into the 54, and Jurgensen goes 2 wheels in the air, the front 2 tires lifting off the ground in the middle of the corner as he comes to a stall with smoke billowing out of the side of his Chevy Silverado.
Yeah, no good way for that to happen. I could see that happening like at the entrance to the corner. They were just a little bit close, a little bit wobbly, and it bitten, but I think everyone's glad for a pit stop here.
So we were on the track to potential green flag pit stops, and I guess that caution certainly wipes the strategy out of the window, at least for now. May have some more strategy down the line if we do get some longer green flag stretches. But Joey Brown, most dominant driver of the race so far, he's led every single lap up to this point. Looks like he will look for a perfect pit stop, 4 fresh tires and some fuel. Try to get to the rest of the race. It does appear like we will have at least one more stop before this race is all said and done. There comes the field first out of pit road. They're going to be looking to the pit road speed limit, and the fight for second is on, and there's a change of hands. Eddie Kerner moves to second with a 13.8 second pit stop, 0.6 of a second faster than Tucker, so he will move into P2, but Joey Brown back out of pit road in the race lead.
Yeah, keeping the lead's pretty easy, but you'll see some shuffling happen here. Our restart's going to be interesting because these guys, the track has warmed up a bit, so it's going to be different to the first start, and we're going to see this one change quite a bit here. And guys are going to be a little bit hungry. There's laps on the board, and they want to make some time here. So with 120 laps total, we're about a third of the way done here. So this is bang on for a pit stop, and you can split the rest of it 50-50, or 40-40 in this case, but 50%, and go to the end. So this really improves things for our drivers.
And what I question here is the strategy on the restart by Joey Brown, because on that opening jump, once the pace car hit pit road, it looked like right out of turn 4, Joey Brown was 100% on the throttle, moving through the gears. He caught everybody off guard, and that's what almost caused that pass for second into turn 1 on the opening lap with Casey Tucker. But obviously that didn't go down. Tucker had to hold back for third. But it's Joey Brown who's been dominating this race so far in his Toyota Tundra TRD Pro, and it looks like he will do the same to command the field. Back to green, which what looks to be lap number 41. When we get there, still the lights on the iRacing official pace car. Well, if you want to learn more about the growing world of eNASCAR, you can scan the QR code on the bottom right of your screen or visit eNASCAR.com and sign up today to get all the latest news and updates from Road to Pro, the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series, and much, much more. I know, Rachel, the Coke Series just had a great race at Darlington a couple of days earlier. On Tuesday night, we saw Steven Wilson get another win on the season. Bobby Zelensky weaved his way into the playoffs, and there was a lot of drama when it came down to the point standings. So many different winners, who was going to get in, who was going to get eliminated from championship contention, and unfortunately Keegan Leahy, the defending champion, not going to be able to defend his crown this time around in 2022. A fantastic race there for the top level of eNASCAR competition, and so far, Rachel, despite that little caution, we've had some solid racing here from Darlington in the opening 40.
Yeah, we really have. It's one of those tracks that will give it to you if you give it the right mixture. And these guys have really been good so far this entire season. I knew Darlington would be a great race, and we're seeing exactly that. It's been fair, it's been fast, it's been exciting. This is definitely no IRP. But we'll see what happens off the restart.
IRP, very short track, very physical. Lots of intensity, and this track has shown some intensity, but in a different way behind the wheel for the field. We've seen some comers and goers, a lot of drivers moving their way up to the field. Eddie Kerner being one of them. Hasn't made a huge trek to call him the hard charger by any stretch of the imagination. He's only +3, started in 5th, but it has been a nice long run truck for that number 18. He's going to look to get it all settled here, potentially take the race lead away. That's only if he can get around the most dominant driver of the night so far. And just like the opening start, Rachel, Joey Brown is off of the gates quickly, all the way to the front straightaway. Green flag back in the air, lap number 41.
Yeah, an early jump will benefit you here. Really gets you down to the right line here to run this corner as you want to. And stretching out here gives them a lot of room. These trucks trying to cycle around, find their places. Everyone's got fresh tyres, so it should be a fairly good restart in terms of traction. The Warmer track, though, can play into this. It'll be who settles in where.
And nobody hit the outside wall out of turn 2, so a good sign. Tucker is about to get swarmed on a high side, trying to make a move under Eddie Kerner, but just gets a little bit too tight. And now here comes Tyler Gary in his go-kart scheme to the very outside. He'll have Kenny Brady right behind him. Brady in also another throwback as well, trying to channel that dominating energy from Donovan Strauss from 1 year ago as he almost makes contact with Tucker, and Tucker is in a free fall through the top 5. He'll try to clear himself instead of Michael Cozy Jr. It's a bit of contact on the front end of that Silverado. Fortunately, siphons through to 5th.
Yeah, keeps that thing stable, keeps it in a good spot there to keep himself advancing, but track is really all over the place so far. Brady, keep an eye on. He's up 6 from the start. We've got another one that's up 5, which is Cozy Jr. He's gone backwards, he's gone forwards, but he's always a contender no matter what happens, Kenneth. He's always one of those guys I'll keep my head on, just like Casey Tucker as well. You've got to keep an eye on those guys. It's the ones that will be consistent no matter what. And Joey Brown, great race so far, great season so far, great round so far. Can he hold this all day?
And Joey Brown comes into tonight's race 8th in the standings, of course. Still not the top spot like a Parker White or Andrew Navarro, who's won the last 2 races in a row. Navarro in the even split over on FTF.GG, not in the odd split race here tonight on Podium Esports, but still a solid season for Joey Brown. That win at Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course, and he has definitely shown a lot of speed across the calendar. Even in round number 1, they're looking to continue their stride over to the Contender Series later on this fall. And then you think of guys like Kenny Brady, who comes into tonight's race 4th in the standings, very high-end drivers. So a lot of momentum to be built on here if you want to get into the Contender Series later on this fall, and just to cap off those final 2 races. And I want to ask you, Rachel, about this placement of Darlington. Of course, we've talked about the IRPs of the world, the Mid-Ohios, the Poconos in the schedule, the Bristol Dirt that's going to be on in 2 weeks' time, Texas is going to end this round 2 schedule, a bunch of different tracks, so much diversity in total. But this is a very intense points fight we're talking about. And last year, Darlington was in round 1, where yes, points mattered to get into the top 70, but it isn't as high of a stake as it is tonight, where in round 2, you're in the final stretch of races and you have to perform. So how important is it that you do well here at a track like Darlington? Let's say if you're those guys 25th on back in point standings that need a huge surge to get into Contender if they want to.
I think this is where it matters, and I think it's a cool and smart decision by the guys at iRacing to set the rounds up this way, because round 2, the important round, let's be honest, it requires a driver to get through to eNASCAR, to be adaptable, to be multi-skilled, to be ready for anything. And this round has definitely been the can you do anything round, because they've thrown us one of everything in NASCAR during this second round of the season, and I think that is integral. You know, the cookie cutters are easy, relatively. These are all the kinds of tracks that are the weird wild cards, the ones that really can make a season. If you can do it here, you can do it anywhere.
It's been that all-around round overall, and, you know, desperately, if you're a driver there, the desperation is going to be so high to the point where, I mean, here at Darlington, you have to nail the setup. You have to be as strong as you can be. Fortunately for the guys that you're riding on board with right now, the ones that you're looking at the front of your screen, you're riding on board with Parker White, who's sitting in 13th, Tucker Minter in 12th. They are some of the highest drivers in this round 2 point standing, so they don't necessarily have a lot to worry about, but it has been surprising to not see them at the very front of the field. It looks like their trucks just kind of hanging around the mid-pack, but maybe that's what they want, just an uneventful race here at this track in the last 3 races, and just to hold their ground. That's all they want to do. It's not all about winning every single race. That does sound nice as a driver, but sometimes it's nice to just hang around, have a clean race, and just do whatever you can to survive. You want to avoid the chaos as much as possible. But there is another story to be had with Parker White and Tucker Minter alike. They are both running very solid paint schemes, and those are throwbacks indeed. Tucker Minter throwing it back to a 2021 Road to Pro qualifying iRacing Series scheme. He finished second in round 1 points, but with this very bright neon green and black Logitech Gialta's eSport Chevy Silverado. And then right behind him, a very different look for Parker White. Usually he's got the Toyota colors on board, sometimes changes his paint scheme, but with the fact that we've got Darlington on the schedule tonight, and the fact that most recently Darlington added the Boeing backstretch, this is probably the most fitting paint scheme of all, Rachel, to have a Boeing paint scheme, the vintage Boeing 777. When that came out, they had that livery on that plane, and as they roll through the Boeing backstretch, the Boeing truck sits calmly in 13.
Sorry, as a pilot saying the vintage 777 bothers me on so many levels. No, even 777. No, there's nothing vintage about Boeing 777. Yeah, vintage livery, I get it, but at the same time, it still bothers me when people do that. But because vintage Boeing did the 247, but that's, you know, me aside from things.
Okay.
No, the race is evolving pretty well. Lap 52 now off 120, so we're coming up in about 8 laps on the halfway point. And so far, 1 caution, that's been really good, I think, for Darlington. We've seen evolution here. We've seen these guys running a lot closer, though, this second stint, that kind of.
Yeah, second stint definitely has seen very different. Well, it seems as though it is mostly the same as that first stint. And obviously, you said that caution, it did splice up the action a little bit, forced the field to calm down after developing that rhythm for so long. But yes, it is nice to see back to see them on the green flag action. And this could open the strategy book once again. We had that caution, and we were expecting green flag pit stops, and we may end up seeing that again. What I wonder here is whether the field is expecting that as well, whether they're seeing that play out into the future, this race going green all the way, now that a majority of the field is now starting to separate more than they did in that opening run. So pit stops will be on the mind of these guys and their crews sooner than later. Obviously, just depends on if we have any problems from here on out. Just want to update you on the DNF list for the moment. Alex Bergeron looks like he also pulled it behind the wall, much like Blake Bottoms did. So unfortunately, Bergeron going to be out of this race. Daniel Smallwood, who was involved in that opening caution in turn 1, he is 1 lap down in 28th. It'll be Matt Cooker, the other truck, 1 lap down. They're fighting for that lucky dog spot if a caution does come out. Cooker holding on to that 27th place position. You ride on board here through around the top 20. This is Boyd Hogan holding on to 18th, the Pocono winner, trying to work on Daniel Nanny in the 23. And this is a good look, Rachel, as to how hard you have to work and how patient you have to be behind the long list of trucks in traffic.
Yeah, you gotta be real patient around here, because it's all about the strategy of Darlington. Finding the right place to pass and get it done it's what will keep your race intact. Anyone can make one pass here. It's about keeping the place. It's also about going for the next one.
Boyd Hogan has certainly had a solid round 2 playoffs, or round 2 run to the Contender Series. I guess you can call it kind of a playoffs if this is the end of the round 2 schedule. But Boyd Hogan currently in 13th going into tonight's race from Darlington. So not the worst place, not the best place, directly in the middle of it all. I think there is probably some nerve if you're Boyd Hogan just trying to hold on and defend that spot to the top 20, because going into tonight's race, it's Brendan John Kohler who has the last spot into the eNASCAR Contender iRacing Series should the points end tonight. But obviously we've got a couple of more races before we settle things through, so that can change dramatically. Tyler Gary, who's running in P3 right now, Rachel, I think he's one of those guys, to my point that I said earlier, back in the top 20 through 25 that need a good run here tonight, especially as well as Bristol Dirt and Texas Motor Speedway in the weeks to come, because he's 21st and he is 1 point out. I think not 1 point out. It's Timmy Holmes that it's 1 point, but it's 3 points to Brendan John Kohler in 20th. So Gary desperately needs a solid run and will need a momentum booster. And for Gary, if he can hold on to third, that's probably the best way you could do it. A win, probably going to be the best case scenario, but for Gary right now, this is definitely favorable.
Yeah, definitely looking pretty favorable for Gary. He needs these points. He's in a good spot for it. And right now, running this grouping here of Brady and Tucker, that's pretty comfortable. But he's also got Cozy Jr. behind him, and Crowder, well, unfortunately, he just crowded the wall a little bit too cozily.
And there might have been some help as well. It was a truck underneath him going out of the corner. That was Tommy Gossett. It looks like they just got a little bit too close together. Gossett up the track, tagged into Crowder, and then a hard slam to the outside wall. Crowder, who started in tonight's race 23rd and had made a solid charge through the front of the field, at least through the mid-pack. Now he's going to fall back all over again. And this time, Derek Lemke is the next truck in line to potentially take that spot away. Crowder with a lack of straightaway speed, so Lemke will look to the inside in turn one. Fortunately, that is turn one we're talking about here at Darlington. The narrowness of the track is going to allow Crowder to at least play some solid defense, and he's going to hold on to that spot for the time being. Here's Christopher Pfeffer on board with his machine as he tries to work on Parker White in the one. Tucker Minter up ahead the road. Jonathan Delaney, Agnell Phillip among those around your top 10, top 13. And so all of them still single file working on each other, but Parker White may have to worry about that rear view mirror. We haven't really talked about that too much because Parker White has been one of the best drivers in this Road to Board qualifying iRacing series, but so has Christopher Pfeffer, so can't sleep on either of them.
Yeah, no, definitely can't. So it's worth kind of keeping their eyes on, worth keeping the momentum moving here, but you just got to make sure you balance this track and make sure you don't pause too quickly, because unfortunately, you make one little mistake here and it'll bite you. And that's what these guys going into the wall are doing. It's unfortunate that you just line it up wrong for the entry to the corner, and your line is basically fixed or you dump it in the speed.
And also as well, with the fact that you do have these large spoilers and not as much power behind this hood of the NASCAR Camping World Truck Series, of what's going to be the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series back in 2023, when Craftsman will be the title sponsor once again. That punches such a huge hole in the air that you're behind on the truck and you're basically swallowing all that dirty air. And at most tracks, you can get away from it. You can take a different line and get some of the clean air on your nose. But with Darlington being basically more of a one-line track than many others on the schedule, you're forced to be behind in traffic. So your setup, at least for these guys on track, these teams, they have to keep that in mind. They have to basically play their setup around the fact that they're most likely going to be in dirty air for most of the race, and they have to adjust properly to that. Tracks like Michigan, you can change lanes. Tracks like IRP, although the high side is usually the most dominant, you can change lanes. At Mid-Ohio, it's a road course, so it's not necessarily the biggest problem in the world. We have Bristol Dirt, where you can change lines, and one truck goes hard into the inside wall. That is Tommy Gossett. Had some contact with Daniel Falkingham, and will that bring out the yellow, Rachel? No, it doesn't. He's underneath the racing line.
Yeah, that's going to happen here. You dump it in the right place, and you're not going to get a caution, which is obviously the worst feeling in the world for the driver, but it's good for the race.
And we'll see what happens. Same deal. Gossett had a problem with Jackson Crowder coming out of turn 4, and it looks like him and Falkingham just got a little bit too close, made some slight contact on the front straightaway. Falkingham just kind of ping-ponged around and then slammed into the side of Tommy Gossett's machine, and Gossett looks like his race may be over. He's got smoke coming out of his Toyota Tundra TRD Pro, so he's going to bring it on to pit road. His race may be officially over. We'll look back to the battle for what could be second place on the racetrack. Eddie Kerner starting to worry a little bit. Tyler Gary pouncing here with 55 laps to go.
And now's the time to really make something happen with this, and really good chance to get a pass in with this one. Eddie Kerner looking a little bit weak here.
Gary will look for the move, still can't quite do it. Looks like Kerner will hug the inside line. First real time we've seen some drivers hug that dash line at the very bottom of 3 and 4. We get the run out of the corner. Looks like Tyler Gary will potentially mount something going back to turn 1. Just does not have enough of a run to do it, so he will hold back, and we'll continue to watch this potential run as Joey Brown has opened it up to 2.3 seconds. And if these guys go side by side, if they elect to run that hard against each other, not only are they going to lose time to Kenny Brady on back, but they're also going to lose time to your race leader. And here comes Gary to the inside for second. Kerner going to have to force his hand, go all the way to the outside line, to 23 degrees of banking in 3 and 4. That's going to help him play some defense. Gary going to lose some time. And then Kenny Brady, I think, has his smile from ear to ear. He's watching them go side by side and saying, all right, this is my time to pounce if I want to get 2 for 1 for second.
Yeah, it could be, but I don't think that's going to be the real option here. I think you need to be a little bit more cautious. Going for 2 cars really is optimistic at Darlington, but I know who's smiling. It's Joey Brown, because they fight, he's off.
You're in the clean air, you're watching everybody tussle behind you, and you're thinking, there's only clear track ahead of me, and all I have to do is just handle my business. Again, we are still looking, if we stay green, at a one-stopper to the end of the race. These guys cannot make it all the way on fuel, as Jackson Crowder has just hit the pit lane. Remember, he hit the outside wall, so potentially some damage repair, maybe an alternate strategy being played. He might hope for a yellow to come out just to get him back on track, but he will probably go 1 lap down as Joey Brown will exit out of turn 4. But Brown, if he can nail that last pit stop and at least manage all the undercuts and overcut strategies that the field can try to put around him, to at least stranglehold him and potentially get themselves closer to the race lead, and Brown should be on track to getting his second win here in round number 2, as there goes Tyler Gary finally making the move underneath Eddie Kerner. He will clear. Eddie did not want to fight him too hard for it, did not offer that much resistance, so Gary will move into second. Kerner will slide into third, but that did invite Kenny Brady and the gang 4th on back closer, so we may see some more trucks all involved in this. And again, a positive sign. If you're the leader, Joey Brown will look to run away with the race leader and only add more time and even lap these guys if it gets to that extent. But just a reminder that our coverage... Oh, go ahead, Rachel.
No, you go right ahead. I'll tell you this afterwards.
I was just about to mention that here on Podium Esports, we are brought to you by Boosted.biz. Boosted builds a custom platform for your brand to sell your products. They take care of everything, pay nothing, and let them handle the rest. To get started with your online store, you can visit Boosted.biz today.
Now, what I was going to say was the 19 of Gary. You can really read the situation here. He's not got the tires anymore. He really doesn't, which is why he's in a tricky. He got Kerner, but he's not gotten away. That's the problem. He has not gotten away. And I think whilst, Kerner may have been a little bit bad as well on tires, Gary's also not making a gap. So this is going to look good to Brady or Mckissick behind them, and Tucker and Cozy. They're all in there. They could all get into here. And we're already seeing the 13 moving up on the 4 as well. So there's a traffic jam forming.
Yeah, we are on lap 35 on the stint for these guys, the front runners up in this field, as you watch Mckissick close in on the rear end of Kenny Brady. So we may see something develop there. They've also got Anthony Burrows, who has made a charge through the field. I feel like we can call him the hardest charger overall, 16th to 6th so far. That setup has been dialed in on behalf of that Allegiant Ford F-150, and in fact, the developing factor for P4 looks like it will come to fruition as Brandon Mckissick will slide ahead of Kenny Brady. They will further invite Burrows into the mix, but Mckissick will move into that 4th place position. He will try to track down Eddie Kerner into that 3rd spot. But you are right, Rachel. Gary, despite getting around Kerner, has not run away. And with the fact that they went side by side for a while, Gary tried to make the move and it failed. They slowed each other down. It brought Kenny Brady, it brought Brandon Mckissick, it brought Anthony Burrows into the mix. And these guys happen to be much faster. So ultimately, it's adding more pressure onto Tyler Gary and Eddie Kerner to perform better on their set of tires. And that pressure may over-push them to the point where they're going to lose more time instead of create the opposite effect and run away from them. Because last time by, Brandon Mckissick, a 31.444. Eddie Kerner, 31.628. And even for Tyler Gary, 31.478. So slower lap times on behalf of 2nd and 3rd. Brandon Mckissick is lighting up lap times right now, and he is eating up the top 3.
Yeah, he is. And maybe I need my own words here, because Gary is starting to pull away here. Kerner definitely his tires are toast. 13 Mckissick coming up on him right now, making that move into 1 and 2 here, and he'll give him that spot. He just backs out a bit. Really no choice there other than to let him have that spot because, yeah, I think Kerner's tires are toast.
Again, it's a game of give and take here at Darlington. We have seen that let-by effect happen so many times, but Kerner just understands the severity of how his tires are handling right now. It looks like Burrows will try to pounce on that. He will look to the inside here in 3 and 4. It'll invite Kenny Brady back into it, who lost the spots to Burrows and the likes of Brandon Mckissick, so he may continue to fall through. Hopefully he can just stabilize here, and we are still getting closer to that potential round of green flag pit stops. It'll be our first, and now, Rachel, I have to ask you, now that the track temp has calmed down by just a couple of degrees, it's only 103, so not the hottest, but still relatively hot in the triple digits. Now, if you're a truck falling back, or even if you're these guys starting to move up through the field, how do you play the strategy to get around Joey Brown in the race lead?
It's tough, honestly, because 3.7 seconds, no one's catching him right now, so what we need is a caution. That's the only real chance I see here, because Brown's tires are looking good. He's broken away on both runs here. We've had on green flag, and he's really not been caught by anybody. The race has been from second back. If you want a chance at him, you gotta get him on a restart. You've got to get him at the start of the round, the run, and try and get ahead of him and stay ahead. Because racing in the dirt, yeah, will affect your tires and how they wear differently. So realistically, no one's catching up to him right now. The gap is still increasing.
Well, now there's also a problem as well on the restarts, because look at the initial start and then look at the first restart after our first yellow. Turn 4, as soon as the pace car goes down, he's the one to launch, and it looks like nobody has really caught up on that. So they're probably going to have to play a little bit of homework and play a little bit of studying if they want to catch up to Joey Brown. And if we do get a yellow by the time this race is over, at least before the checkered flag is waved, you're going to have to take note of that, or maybe just handle business before that. Get a faster pit stop than Joey Brown, force him into a mistake somehow, or just pray that something bad happens to Brown, that he loses some time, and that you can ultimately get that position taken away and hold on to the race lead. It's somewhat of the Donovan Strauss effect that you're watching here at Darlington. Obviously, in that 2021 race, we had a different leader before Strauss took it over and then just led the whole field up till then, as we've got a couple of drivers on pit road. In fact, we do Agnell Phillip, Justin Knobloch, some of the first two to come in for service. Also, Christopher Pfeffer in the 11 truck. He will also tuck in behind them. So, looks like green flag pit stops are well and alive here at lap 81.
This is where we could see some real problems in terms of cautions as people try and get on and off pit road, because it isn't exactly an easy job around Darlington. So that's one to keep an eye on. But you'll lose like 1 to 2 laps around here trying to get on pit road and get a green flag service. So you got to be pretty careful.
And these guys looking for the undercut strategy. So these drivers looking for the fresh tires earlier on, and for a majority of the drivers up to the top 5, top 10, they have not even looked at pit road quite yet into the final 39 laps of this race. Parker White into the midfield. He's been running around the top 13 and 15, so he is going to be the next one on a pit road. Looks like it's going to be a solo trip for that Boeing Toyota Tundra TRG Pro. Actually, never mind. A couple of trucks there to follow behind as Agnell Phillip and company will exit pit road. I believe Eddie Kerner is also going to follow suit. Kerner was running in the top 5. Jonathan Delaney, Boyd Hogan going to go around. Kerner seeming to be the only driver in his group to come in for service, so that moves 18th on back. All of those drivers all coming in for 4 fresh Goodyear Eagles and some fuel to make it all the way to the end. And now we look back to Joey Brown and everybody second on back. Tyler Gary, Brandon Mckissick, do they look for pit road? The answer going to be no. Anthony Burrows running the low side, but even him not looking for the entrance onto the stall. Kenny Brady, a couple spots behind. He's going to come in. Same deal for Jonathan Delaney, who almost locked up the brakes.
Yeah, now's really a time to start focusing on that. And if I'm running towards the front of this race, I'm waiting until the end of this cycle because I know my tires are good long. So undercut's not going to help them. But I really, really, really want to make sure this flag cycle stays green. Because if I go down and I now get trapped a lap or 2 down, I'm screwed. So you want to kind of give this a real late shot.
It seems as though the later the better. You want the freshest tires for the end of the stint, and if your setup is good for the shorter runs, if you don't necessarily pledge on the long runs as much, you want the freshest tires the latest in this case. As here comes your race leader finally in for service, Joey Brown, your dominator all night long up until this point, so he will relinquish the race lead for the first time, I think, overall. Casey Tucker going over the radio. He's going to come into pit road. Same deal for Brandon Mckissick. Anthony Burrows going to slide in behind him. A huge check up on the brakes and a slide again out of Burrows. He will close in on the back end of McKissick. He will fortunately make pit road speed limit, but what that showed us, Rachel, is something that we really haven't talked about all evening long. The toughness of getting on to this Darlington pit road. You have to scour maybe 4 or 5 lanes to the left while braking at the same time to get into the lane and then find your stall after. It is such a treacherous trip down there. Fortunately, no penalties for the moment.
Well, we have talked about it. I talked about it about 2 minutes ago. But, you know, yeah, it's a really tough track, pit road to get onto here. You're basically going down middle of 3, so it's really tricky here. And it's super flat there, so the chance of spinning out is really high.
So Michael Cozy Jr., he's going to stay out. He's going to be one of the only ones to not take service. Daniel Falkingham, who's running 3rd, he is now coming to pit road. Nathan Jurgensen, who was involved in our first caution in turn 1, he has also not come in. Boyd Hogan going to call for pit road this time by Eddie Kerner, looking to unlap himself. They will clear each other easily before they get to turn 4, so Boyd Hogan will scour down into the pit lane. Same for Michael Cozy Jr., so this should be our last round of stops for the rest of this race, up until maybe if we do get a yellow to stop the field for the moment, but it will cycle Joey Brown, lead back to the race lead. Agnell Phillip, though, has gained some positions. He pitted a couple laps before Joey Brown did, so the undercut working slightly for Agnell Phillip. Justin Knobloch in that group as well, Christopher Pfeffer, so they are breaking up the group of Tyler Gary, the group of Brandon Mckissick, all those guys who had worked so hard in that last run to get into the top 3. Now they're getting sucker punched quite a bit because they've got a couple of trucks they need to get to if they want to get back to Joey Brown.
Yeah, Cozy Jr. coming off pit road. I want to see where he cycles out this time, and it's a long run around there because you're basically staying on the flat, trying to keep the speed you can here. Look at how hard this is. It's completely flat. In fact, it's negative camber. You're trying to get to the point where you can rejoin the track here, just an exit of 2. So it's a really long exit from pit road, but we'll see where he filters out of this one. He was leading before he went in, of course, to the side.
Oh, contact! Jurgensen into the outside wall. Got hit by Christopher Pfeffer. It was a bunch of fresh tire trucks trying to weave around Nathan. And I was about to mention, once you finished your point, Rachel, that they were basically just scattering away and they were not knowing what to do. Justin Knobloch had made a pass because of the slow truck on Agnell Phillip, and that almost could have been the caution to bring us under rest for the second time tonight. Look at Phillip wiggle the truck out of 4, trying to get around Jurgensen. Knobloch taking advantage, and as Pfeffer tried to cut down, got into the rear end and slammed Jurgensen into the outside wall.
Yeah, that's one of the things about green flag cycles at a track like Darlington without much room. Mixing with new tires and old tires will get messy. Look at this replay here. Oh my god, they're all over the place.
Wow.
Ooh, that's some dodging.
Parker White, who was running basically 13th all race long, with this strategy, he's weaved into 5th. And that avoidance right there has definitely saved his race. And now, does Pfeffer have some damage on the front end? Indeed, he does. A crinkle on the front of that Toyota Tundra TRD Pro. Rachel, does that affect the aerodynamic performance, and how much is this going to help everybody 5th on back?
Hugely. Yeah, it will really, really hurt his aerodynamics because it's a huge aero track at Darlington. For its size, it's a really fast track, and this will hurt him. Now, 1.3 miles it's not cookie cutter, but it's not a short track either. So yeah, the aero is massive in these corners especially, so that will really, really hurt. But Parker White, though, I've got to say, I don't think he was too popular in high school, because that guy's good at dodgeball.
Okay, all right, I like that reference, but Parker, certainly avoidance at its highest, and he is closing in now, not only on Pfeffer, but on Agnell Phillip, who has seemed to come up on a downfall here, being on the older set of tires. Of course, he was one of the undercutters here, along with Pfeffer, but after that wiggle out of 4, and after the heap of almost wreckage with Nathan Jurgensen, all of them covering around the front straightaway going into turn 1. Phillip has not been able to get back that momentum, and Parker White will slip in front. It looks like a couple more trucks are looking to pounce. That is Tyler Gary, Eddie Kerner, Kenny Brady, all 3 of them looking to get around Phillip, and it looks like they will accomplish that goal by the time they reach turn 3. So Phillip in a huge struggle, pushing it back to P8.
Yeah, that really will cycle things around there, of course, and Knobloch up here to second place, running just behind Brown, but the gap is increasing every lap still. Brown is just pulling away here. No one can really hold him to this. Pfeffer, though, is he pitted yet? You check his laps here, but
he has.
He has.
15
wow.
laps ago.
Pfeffer is off sequence, but might work. Gets a caution. I mean, after about 5 laps, I think here, everyone's pitting for tyres if we get another caution, because you'll go to the end from there. So yeah, everyone will take tyres. So that puts him in a good spot.
And also to note, if we do get a caution, these guys have one more set of tires left. There were 3 sets in the pits. These guys have already used 2 after the first caution. That's when you saw the whole field come down pit road for the first time. Nobody took 2 tires. They all took 4, and it's the same scenario here under green. Everybody taking 4 fresh Goodyear Eagles as you watch Tyler Gary weave around Parker White for 4th. And then you'll see Eddie Kerner and Kenny Brady work on that as well. The tire difference working in favor of the guys who have pitted later. But just in case, if we do get a caution, if something happens, all of the drivers in the field should have that 1 set of tires left. Maybe some 2 tire calls could be in the mix. We have seen it happen before at various tracks in our round 1 and round 2 schedule. But of course, that is all theoretical. That is, of course, if we get a yellow flag. As you watch Eddie Kerner work underneath Kenny Brady, they have still yet to get around the 95 of Parker White, and Tyler Gary will slip into 3rd. He gets around Christopher Pfeffer with ease. So Gary on a statement night here from Darlington as you watch this trio continue to work around this top 5. Parker White not making it easy for Brady or Kerner.
Yeah, not at all. White is definitely keeping that a very, very wide truck. Pretty much a dually compared to the rest of the field here, but he is unfortunately losing battle, I think, in terms of what they've got in that vehicle.
Kenny Brady in the 6th position. He finished 3rd a couple of weeks back at IRP, Indianapolis Raceway Park, so it has been a solid stretch of races for Brady so far. If he can get underneath Parker White, it would be another top 5 to his name. Parker White also trying to get another top 5. He finished 4th at the short track at IRP as well, so these guys just looking for some positive momentum just to continue their stride through contender. These guys, like I mentioned earlier in the show, rather comfortable in the point standings through the top 20. Not much they have to worry about as long as they can have some uneventful races, as long as they can keep their trucks clean. Although that was almost a unclean move there. They almost about made contact at a turn 4 as they're getting around some of the lap trucks, one of them being Nathan Jurgensen in his 21. Then they should be clear. They should be rather solid moving into the fall as Eddie Kerner tried getting his nose underneath that Toyota Tundra TRD Pro, but cannot quite do it. And now here comes Brandon Mckissick, a move under Kerner into turn 3.
Yeah, good spot to do it there, but a little bit late in the run. Got some guys coming off pit road here, the 8 being one of them. Be forking him. It's got a bit of 2 wide back here in this grouping. It's going to be tricky to see when it plays out, but they're definitely pushing this thing. A little bit of shuffling still. One filtering through, getting that one line for the exit, but it's a lot more movement than I'd hoped to see.
And look at Anthony Burrows, how strong of a run he's had tonight. That number 62 started 16th, and the highest he's been in this field is P6. And obviously, with the trucks right in front of him and the fresher tires that he has, it is not going to be that tough of a journey as he moves around Parker White. On the older set of Goodyear Eagles, he will move into 7th. And now he's got Brandon Mckissick, Christopher Pfeffer, Kenny Brady and company all up ahead in clear sight on his front windshield. So Burrows looking to nab all these positions away and potentially have a nice points booster going into Bristol Dirt 2 weeks from now, and he will follow in the tracks of Brandon Mckissick, most likely in a turn 3. Indeed, he will. Pfeffer on the older set of tires. And right now, Rachel, it looks like if a caution doesn't come out with 19 laps to go, if you're on that older set of tires, you've made your bet. Now you just have to nurse them to the end and just make sure you hold on and survive. It's more about clinging to those tires for dear life instead of outright pushing all the way to the end. That's just a difference of strategy, and also just a testament to how rough this Darlington surface is.
Yeah, it's a really abrasive racing surface here, which will definitely put out to those guys, but look at the gap here. Brown, 6.3 seconds. You don't want a caution.
As they continue to run under this green flag stretch, looks like Justin Knobloch will fall back to 6, so Anthony Burrows will enter the top 5. I think the highest we've seen Burrows run all evening long, so a nice move up through the field for that Allegiant Ford F-150. Burrows having some eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series experience. He filled in for Kligerman Sport after Isaac Gann, but was not able to run, I think, the rest of the season back last year. So Anthony Burrows had some Coke experience with the Gen 6 Cup car. Obviously, the next gens providing an equalizer for even the veterans in the series as Parker White wiggles the truck out of turn 4. He's starting to struggle with the rear end, and looks like Eddie Kerner will follow in suit. And so already the physicality showing out here from Darlington in the last 17 laps. And again, Rachel, it's just all about clinging on, surviving, because you make that one mistake and your race could be over as you ride on board with Kerner.
You're racing for the trucks, so gotta be careful. Get into slippery territory where someone might make a mistake they don't intend to.
So Justin Knobloch, it looks like he'll fall another spot short, as Tucker Minter, who was sliding to 7th. Haven't seen much of Minter, and much like Parker White, they are starting to make a resurgence here rather late in this race. Just kind of hanging around the mid-pack to start. Looked like they wanted to avoid all of the chaos, and avoid the chaos they did. And through this green flag run, they have found their way to the very front. Tucker Minter pitting later than Parker White by a handful of laps, so that's why Minter has the upper hand right now. Parker White still falling back to the top 10 and maybe at the mercy of 11th, but still Eddie Kerner and that colorful Chevy Silverado still looking for that move, as Burrows will now get another spot here. Kenny Brady next on the chopping block, and still following in the tracks, that colorful number 13, Brandon Mckissick, as they will try to hold on for the last 15 or so laps here from the Darlington Raceway in Darlington, South Carolina. But just a reminder that our coverage here of the eNASCAR Road to Pro Qualifying iRacing Series on Podium Esports is brought to you by Battle Beaver. Battle Beaver has everything you need for your next professionally modded custom controller. With options for PlayStation, Xbox, GameCube, and more, Battle Beaver has everything you need to elevate your gaming potential. Head to BattleBeaverCustoms.com to customize your controller today, and you can use the code PODIUM for 10% off your next purchase.
I wonder if they'll do me a custom SNES controller.
Do they do SNES controllers?
I don't know. I'll have to go to Battle Beaver and find out.
Well, they have GameCube, so that they go pretty far into the Nintendo catalog. I wouldn't be surprised if they do have the SNES, because Nintendo 64 was in the middle. They probably have Nintendo 64 controllers too. I can imagine this. Very popular controllers, very odd-looking controllers, but
I'm gonna find out. Let's see just how complicated these guys go.
Here's a look on board with Tucker Minter, who's holding on to 7th. He is catching up to the likes of Casey Tucker and Kenny Brady. He does have 2-lap fresher tires than Brady, but he's on the equal set as Casey Tucker, so I think that just shows you how quick Tucker Minter is, or at least how quick his setup is. Has been dialed in as the track has cooled off just a little bit this afternoon setting in sim. And Casey Tucker making a slide job in front of Brady, almost checked him up into Tucker Minter's front end. Fortunately, they all avoid contact, but that will help Tucker Minter and his momentum out of turn 2. Potential move for P6 on the racetrack, turn 3.
Yeah, going for it up here. It's going to be interesting to see if you can fit through here, but the 2 and the 4 trying to get things done. Minter and Tucker still kind of all over each other with this one. We've got the 6 up front there, the 4, the 2 behind him, Minter, Brady. The gap's widening now.
So Minter holds control over Brady. Now we'll try to catch back up to Casey Tucker. That little instance there, him making the move on Brady, at least for Tucker, had slowed down the other Tucker, Tucker Minter. It's somewhat of a tongue twister there. Both of them named Tucker, but just first name for Tucker Minter, last name for Casey Tucker, as you ride on board with a driver not named Tucker, Michael Cozy Jr., working here on Parker White. Again, the Starcom Racing throwback from the Cup Series team just a couple of years back. Michael Cozy will have easy work here on Parker White going into turn 1. Justin Knobloch and Christopher Pfeffer going at it for 8th. But Cozy Jr. will have a solid move and almost make contact with Knobloch coming out of turn 2 with a bottleneck everybody there. 3 wide. Eddie Kerner, 2 spots for 1, turn 3.
Good for Kerner, but that's not what we want to have happen in that sort of situation. Really getting messy down there.
It looks like Cozy Jr. was able to hold off Kerner. That move could have been detrimental for Cozy, who's on a fresher set of Goodyear Eagles for the last 9 laps in this race. Try to work on Knobloch and Pfeffer. They have since calmed each other down, not running side-by-side for position. I think they understood just how negative the effects can be, as Cozy will now work methodically under Knobloch. He'll slide up into 3 and 4. It looks like that pass will be actually complete here on behalf of the 99. just the grip level too high against Knobloch here. Knobloch will have the run out of turn 4, but he is basically clear. Cozy making that pass. He continues his trek through the very front of the field. But speaking of the front of the field, Joey Brown has opened things up. 6.5 seconds on Tyler Gary, and it seems like it is growing. Tyler Gary is trying his dearest to catch up to this number 14. But Rachel, it has been all Joey Brown since the drop of the green flag. And really the only laps that he hasn't led here in tonight's race has been because of that green flag pit stop sequence. He has been unstoppable here tonight.
Yeah, it really has. Joey Brown looking for the gold. It's really been an impressive drive. He's really not put a foot wrong. I've been impressed. This has been pretty dominating.
And you look back to race number 1 of round number 2 in the even split. We didn't cover that here on Podium Esports. We covered the split where Parker White took his win in round number 2, but Joey Brown took his first, led the most laps, and dominated that road course race. And it looks like the oval side hasn't been a problem either. Brandon McKissick, though, gets around Tyler Gary for second. Anthony Burrows closing in on these two, so Burrows may have some more positions he can gain before this is all said and done. Here comes an exit pass out of turn 2. And the Walter man, Anthony Burrows, is going to look inside here on Tyler Gary, and that pass will be made done. And a check mark on the box there for Burrows. He slides into the podium spot. He will try to catch up to McKissick before this race waves the checkered flag. A couple of lap trucks in front of Joey Brown. That includes Nathan Jurgensen in the 21, the 11, and Matt Ford Kappa. But Joey Brown has handled lap traffic swimmingly. They've done a nice job of staying out of harm's way. And Joey Brown, outright the fastest truck on the racetrack, will come out of turn 4 for 4 laps to go from the virtual Darlington Raceway.
It's been pretty flawless. His management of lap traffic has been the most impressive for me. They have not caused him a single issue. It really has been a powerful drive. And, you know, McKissick's off, up from 14th. Burrows up from 16th. That's a big movement from those two. And that's been through the green flag cycle.
And I mentioned earlier in the race, if Brown can just hold on and knock those pit stops off, he could definitely be the most dominant driver and easily take this win. It looks like that is going to be the case unless we do get a caution. Here's a nice quartet around top 10 on back. This is Eddie Kerner working on Justin Knobloch. We've seen Knobloch fall a little bit through the field. Again, he is on the older set of tires, and these undercut trucks have done a nice job despite the lack of grip compared to the drivers who made that overcut strategy. Here's Delaney looking underneath Parker White. A little too dangerous, though, out of the corner, and they almost made contact. Looks like Boyd Hogan, a little bit of a yell over the radio as he currently runs in 14th behind this group. I think he just wants them to stuff it up just a little bit so he can catch up with 3 laps to go.
I'd say a good 3/4 of the field here wants a caution, and there's about 3 trucks that don't.
So we'll keep an eye on that battle around the top 10 as Knobloch slammed the outside wall to turn 4, so that opens the door wide open for Kerner and for Parker White, and even for Jonathan Delaney. 3 spots lost for Knobloch there. That one mistake costing him, and Kerner hitting the outside wall as well will open things up for Parker White. But Joey Brown coming out of turn 4 will grab the white flag. No more cautions to interfere with this race. It's gone green since the first, and Joey Brown looking for his 2nd win in round 2.
Yeah, it's been fantastic for Brown. He'll come through here one last time, and it has been such a dominant run. Nearly 6 seconds here on the card for him. An impressive gap at an oval track, I gotta say. 6 seconds is really normally unheard of, especially at this level of competition. So a fantastic drive, especially for a guy I think we've only seen once so far this season. He'll come across the line there for the win here at Darlington. He's been an even split nearly all this time. Here he is, showed up at the odd split, showed him how it's done.
So Joey Brown caps off a clinic performance on behalf of the rest of the field. Here's a battle still developing. Kerner, Delaney to the line. Kerner will hold on. That is for 11th. Here is Christopher Pfeffer, I believe, in a battle here. This is further back in the field. Or actually, no, that is not Pfeffer. That is another green truck out of the racetrack. They'll go side by side, but that'll also calm down as they reach the start-finish line. But it is all on Joey Brown, who slows it down. Will have this cool-down lap all to himself and gets his 2nd win in round 2 of the eNASCAR Road to Pro qualifying iRacing series. We talked about his dominating race in the even split at Mid-Ohio. Led 52 laps at IRP 2 weeks ago. And an exclamation mark for Joey Brown. Win number 2 as he burns it down from Darlington. So Joey Brown takes win number 2 in round number 2 here from Darlington. Led obviously the most laps out of anyone in the field after starting on pole and never looked back. Brandon Mckissick, Anthony Burrows have to applaud the move up through the field for both of them. Mckissick starting 14th. Burrows starting 16th, and both of them end up 2nd and 3rd to round out the podium. We'll see if we can talk to all 3 of them before we wrap up our coverage here tonight on Podium Esports. It's Tyler Gary, who made a strong run in his go-kart throwback scheme. He ends up P4. Casey Tucker in the 28. He wraps up the top 5 before the fellow Logitech G Altus Esports driver of Tucker Minter in the 10. He is P6. Kenny Brady ends up 7th. Michael Cozy Jr. in his Starcom Racing throwback and moves that Silverado to P8. It'll be Christopher Pfeffer, one of the drivers on the undercut strategy, holding on for 9th, and Parker White rounding out your top 10.
11th place will be Eddie Kerner, with 12th place being Jonathan Delaney, Boyd Hogan, Justin Knobloch, Agnol Phillip with Connor Horn, Brian Blackford in 17th with Ty Bass 18th, Matt Fokappa with Daniel Nanny in 20th. Behind them, the last few trucks in our field: Daniel Forkingham, Timmy Holmes, Matt Cocker, Nathan Jurgensen, Daniel Smallwood, Derek Lemke, Tommy Gossett, Jackson Crowder, Alex Bergeron, and Blake Bottoms.
So that is your full 30 truck field here tonight from Darlington. Usually we're accustomed to seeing 35. Unfortunately, we did not get the extra 5 here in this odd split, but 30 trucks total. That's the finishing position here from Darlington, South Carolina. But we will go all the way to the driver in victory lane, and that is the number 14 of Joey Brown, who started on pole and practically led every single lap apart from the change of position under the green flag pit stops. Joey, looked like this race could not be ripped away from you despite any circumstance. You had that first caution earlier in the race, led the field on the restart, and it looked like you never went back. What went behind this outrageous speed here from Darlington to get your second win in round number 2?
Man, that was awesome. After the past couple of races we've had, this was a relief. We've been fast every race, but the past 2 have kind of slipped out of our hands, and feels good to finally get back in and get to the top. But man, we've been putting a lot of work into this setup. All the guys at the shop, Ken, Brad, Brody, all those guys, we've been all really digging in, getting our Coke team, our Road to Pro team at the next level. Looking forward to winning more races ahead. Like to thank everyone at Ryko, for the support and everything. Roasted Gyms, they've been on board. They've been helping out with some of the things. Garza Law Firm, what they do, But yeah, man, that was awesome.
8th in points in the Road to Pro standings going into tonight's race after what was a chaotic one of the short track at IRP a couple of weeks back. What went into mind for not only you, but for the entire team for Darlington? Any notes, any enlarged factors that came to mind when you guys were looking at tonight's race and looking at your performance overall?
I think our number 1 note was to not miss pit road like we did at IRP. Can't believe we did that last week. But yeah, no, really just making no mistakes. Just putting together a solid race, get a good finish. What happens happens. I knew we had something fast. It was just a matter of getting out front, staying out front. It's real hard to pass at this track, especially in these trucks. It's all about momentum, and there's not a whole lot of room to use that momentum to make passes here. But yeah, really just needed to execute our pit stops, the green flag stops, everything. It was all flawless tonight. Like to thank Brad, keeping my head cool during the whole race there. He was sitting on the box, Brad Wright. But yeah, that was pretty cool.
Execution seemed to be the main focus, and it seemed to not be an issue whatsoever once we dropped the green here from Darlington. And throughout this race, we were almost about to have our first round of green flag pit stops around lap 35, lap 40. That caution came out, brought everybody down pit road, but that second time in that last stint really brought out the long green flag run in this Darlington race. Were there any concerns about the undercut or the overcut strategy with the competition around you?
No, not really. We had pulled a big enough lead to where the initial strategy was I was just going to wait until second and third place at pit, but we were getting kind of close on our pit window, so we decided to just come in. They came in with us to kind of keep things even, but it kind of worked out how we wanted it to. Came back ahead out of everyone that had short pit, so didn't really have anyone to compete with after that. So it just ended up working out.
All works out for you in the end. Of course, I mentioned eighth in the point standings going into tonight's race. I'm sure that position place would be much higher and very comfortable into the top 20 by the time we reach the next track on the schedule. And speaking of next tracks, we've got Bristol Dirt up next, Texas Motor Speedway to finalize round 2 on September 29th. Your thoughts about those two tracks and how you feel you're going to perform there?
I mean, Bristol is it's going to be kind of a lottery, I think. I'm pretty good on dirt. I think we got some good. We got a couple guys that are currently in the Pro World Outlaw Late Model Series, so we got some good dirt builders that'll help out. So we'll be pretty quick there. But then again, it's anything can happen. It's going to be a rough race, a lot of beating and banging. And then Texas will be a little bit more mild. I've always been pretty good at Texas, so hopefully I'm planning on getting a pretty good finish there.
Well, 2 wins certainly does sound good, though. The win at Mid-Ohio to start this all off, and then the win here tonight from Darlington, Utah, Andrew Navarro as the only other driver to have the most wins out of this round 2 schedule. I'm sure that's something to be very proud about. Bristol Dirt up next. Texas going to be a lot of excitement, but Joey, on behalf of our entire team here at Podium Esports, want to send you a warm congratulations on the win here from the track Too Tough to Tame, and looking forward to seeing you rip the dirt up at Bristol in a couple of weeks' time.
All right, thanks, guys.
That's Joey Brown in the 14, dominated this race, and it looked like issues were non-existent on behalf of his Toyota Tundra TRD Pro as he gets his second checkered flag of this round 2 schedule. Rachel, I believe you're caught up with one of the biggest movers in tonight's field, Brandon Mckissick in his Chevy Silverado.
Yeah, certainly am. Brandon up 12 spots from 14th. Seemed like a late race strategy really spun this one for you.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, from the start, I got off to a fairly slow start, and I was like plowing tight in the one, and I was like, oh god, I'm gonna struggle. But I got used to it the more the laps went, and then the rhythm kicked back in for this weather. And honestly, I just stuck to the bottom because I found out like a few hours before the race that that line is pretty good the whole time. So I was like, let me just take this clean air because I know my set's good in the long run, and just put it on display in cleaner air, and it worked out. We were able to get a lot of spots, and the caution helped us because we were able to close the intervals between people in the top 5 that we had lost a lot of time to before that, just getting through traffic. So after the restart, we were able to, throughout those 2 runs, just continue what we were doing before, and we ended up here.
Obviously fantastic for the overall points. We are heading into Bristol Dirt next week. Is that one you've kind of budgeted to be, well, as Joey Brown said, a lottery? Is that something you're expecting to not necessarily depend on?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, my Michigan finish was really bad. It should have been like a top 10 or top 5, but I got wrecked late, so I got 24th. And then we have last week at IRP when I got turned and got 15th, so I lost a lot of points there. So I'm not locked in yet. So Bristol Dirt is going to be nerve-wracking for me because I want to keep my cushion, or at least not lose too much of it going into Texas. So definitely going to have to be on it for my preparation, but it's going to be somewhat of a crapshoot because there's not too much I can control when it comes down to like late race chaos. So it's just honestly prepare for the best, try to be as fast as I can, and then just hopefully just have things go my way.
Sounds like the general strategy. Anyway, anybody like to give a shout out to or thank out?
Yeah, I'd like to give a shout out to Legacy Esports and everyone who worked hard on the set. It was an excellent truck to drive, one of the best I've ever driven without a doubt. I'd like to thank you guys for broadcasting. Anthony Burrows in particular for working with me that whole race. He was a great teammate to have behind me. And then I'd also like to give a shout out to V-Speed for being on my truck every single week.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much. Brandon Mckissick coming home today in second.
Great race overall for the Chevy Silverado and Brandon Mckissick. Of course, a lot of momentum riding to Bristol Dirt. Those races going to be very pivotal. What was also pivotal was the move to third from 16th on the starting grid for Anthony Burrows and his Allegiant Ford F-150. Anthony, you had a solid view of practically every scenario here from Darlington. You had a view at the front, you had a view in the mid-pack where things were probably the most hectic of all, in the midst of dirty air. What was that like behind the wheel, handling-wise, in those dynamic scenarios throughout the last stint, most notably in tonight's event?
It was all over the place. Kind of had a good mix of having cleaner throughout the race, and then good bit of dirty air behind cars. But just kind of wasn't quite the best the first 20 laps. But once we got past that stage, me and Brandon were starting to dig and found ourselves in second and third at the end of that. So can't really ask for much more. I think Joey won by like 6 or 7 seconds. That is absolutely insane. So good job to him on the win. But yeah, just fought as hard as I could and just kept my head in it.
Kept your head in it, you did, and that results in this podium finish. And Darlington, obviously a track where it's more about racing the track instead of mostly racing the competition. Was rhythm a large factor into the way your speed developed over the course of the race, or what was it that really sparked off that run to the very end where it looked like your truck just lit on fire and was one of the fastest out there?
Yeah, for sure. I'd say this is a pretty big rhythm track. You kind of work two different lines in 3 and 4 too, so it was pretty fun trying to work both the lines and kind of see whatever was faster each lap. But um, yeah, I felt pretty good. I kind of just followed behind Brandon the whole race. I knew if I could just follow him through. I mean, he started from the back and made his way to the top five many times this season. So if I knew if I could just keep with him, I'd eventually find myself up there. So
So now next two races on the round two schedule to close us out near the end of September. Bristol Dirt, our first and only dirt race of the schedule. And then probably the most normal track out of round two entirely, Texas Motor Speedway, to close things off. What's the mindset for preparing for both of those tracks?
I'm definitely gonna put in as much work as I can for Bristol. That's dirt tracks and the NASCAR stuff has always been a big struggle for me. So if I can just put in as much work as I can and finish top three the last two races, we'll go from there and see if that's good enough for top 20. But yeah, hopefully those go. Hopefully those go good.
Well, if there's one thing for certain is that the positivity very high after this third place finish here from Darlington, South Carolina. Anthony, on behalf of our team here at Podium Esports, want to send you a congratulations on the podium finish here tonight. And of course, wishing you the best of luck once we get to Bristol Dirt in 2 weeks' time.
I appreciate it, guys.
So Anthony Burrows wraps up the top three. He finishes behind Brandon Mckissick, who finishes behind your race winner here tonight, Joey Brown. A great finish for all three of them. Joey Brown, Brandon Mckissick, and Anthony Burrows on three very different scenarios, Rachel, in the point standings for the top 20 going into the last two races. We had a solid one here from Darlington. Only one caution. So I guess the clean trend continues.
It does indeed. Wow. It's going to be really tense going into these final two. I think everyone's desperate for Texas, but I can't wait for Bristol Dirt.
Yeah, Texas, a lot of people are going to be looking forward to because, again, it's probably the most normal track out of the round two schedule, which is very odd to say, but Bristol Dirt in 2 weeks' time is going to provide for a spectacle. It's our first and only dirt track race of the entire schedule. We visited the asphalt version of Bristol in round number one. We had Parker White win the top split race in April 14th, but we go to the Bristol Dirt track this time around on September 15th. 110 laps will go around that half-mile dirt oval. It's going to be a lot of fun. These trucks are going to be whipping themselves sideways. We'll see if we can get some eventual winners out of it as we close in on who's exactly going to be the 20 that make it into the eNASCAR Contender iRacing Series later this fall. Well, if you want to know more about the growing world of eNASCAR, you can scan the QR code on the bottom right of your screen, or you can visit eNASCAR.com and sign up today to get all the latest news and updates from tonight's Road to Pro race and the future two races in round number two, the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series playoffs, and much more. Use that QR code eNASCAR.com and sign up today. Bristol Dirt next on the calendar, but for everyone here at Podium Esports, for Gary Sexton and John Theodore, for our producer this evening, Ryan Bauer, our camera builder, Dougie Beard, our overlay builder, Michael Hall, Derek Watson and Garrett Mashburn for our statistics, Cameron Aubernon covering our social media, and for my colleague in the booth tonight, Rachel Whiteford, my name is Kenneth Bueno, saying so long and thank you so much for watching the eNASCAR Road to Pro qualifying iRacing series from the track Too Tough to Tame. Congratulations to Joey Brown, Bristol Dirt, 2 weeks from tonight.